Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL and uploaded this video for BS English students. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities and was admitted to a postdoctoral study program abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966 Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at
Modern linguistics. Linguistics or modern linguistics refers to the scientific study of language and its structure. This includes the study of features such as grammar, syntax, and phonetics. Moreover, modern linguistics regards language as a system and grammar is only considered as a systematic description of a certain language, either oral or written. The modern field of linguistics dates from the beginning of the 19th century. While ancient India and Greece had a remarkable grammatical tradition, throughout most of history linguistics had been the province of philosophy, rhetoric, and literary analysis to try to figure out how human language works. But in 1786, an amazing discovery was made. There are regular sound correspondences among many of the languages spoken in Europe, India, and Persia. For example, the English F sound often corresponds to a P sound in, among others, Latin and Sanskrit, an important ancient language of India. English Latin Sanskrit. Father Pater Pitar. Full Plenus Pernus. Forper Pari. Scholars realized that these correspondences, found in thousands of words, could not be due to chance or to mutual influence. The only reliable conclusion was that these languages are related to one another because they come from a common ancestor. Much of 19th century linguistics was devoted to working out the nature of this parent language, spoken about 6,000 years ago, as well as the changes by which Proto-Indo-European, as we now call it, developed into English, Russian, Hindi, and its other modern descendants. This program of historical linguistics continues today. Linguists have succeeded in grouping the 5,000 or so languages of the world into a number of language families sharing a common ancestor. The study of language structure. At the beginning of the 20th century, attention shifted to the fact that not only language change, but language structure as well, is systematic and governed by regular rules and principles. The attention of the world's linguists turned more and more to the study of grammar. In the technical sense of the term, the organization of the sound system of a language and the internal structure of its words and sentences. By the 1920s, the program of structural linguistics, inspired in large part by the ideas of the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, was developing sophisticated methods of grammatical analysis. This period also saw an intensified scholarly study of languages that had never been written down. It had by then become commonplace, for example, for an American linguist to spend several years working out the intricacies of the grammars of Chippewa, Ojibwa, Apache, Mohawk, or some other indigenous language of North America. The last half-century has seen a deepening of understanding of these rules and principles, and the growth of a widespread conviction that despite their seeming diversity, all the languages of the world are basically cut from the same cloth. As grammatical analysis has become deeper, we have found more fundamental commonalities among the languages of the world. The program initiated by the linguist Noam Chomsky in 1957 sees this fact as a consequence of the human brain being pre-wired for particular properties of grammar, thereby drastically limiting the number of possible human languages. The claims of this program have been the basis for a great deal of recent linguistic research, and have been one of the most important centers of controversy in the field. Books and journal articles routinely present evidence for or against the idea that central properties of language are innate. Language use, studies of meaning. There is also a long tradition in the study of what it means to say that a word or sentence means a particular thing and how these meanings are conveyed when we communicate with each other. Two popular ideas about what meanings are go back to the ancient Greeks. One is that meanings are mental representations of some sort. Another is that the meaning of an expression is purely a function of how it is used. Both ideas have launched research programs that are active today. They have been joined by a third approach, building on work by philosophers such as Gottlob Frege and Bertrand Russell, which applies formal methods derived from logic, and attempts to equate the meaning of an expression with reference and the conditions under which it might be judged to be true or false. Other linguists have been looking at the cognitive principles underlying the organization of meaning, including the basic metaphoric processes that some claim to see at the heart of grammar. And still others have been examining the ways that sentences are tied together to form coherent discourse. Language use, the social side of language. In the past 50 years, there has been increasing attention to the social side of language as well as the mental. The subfield of sociolinguistics has come of age in part as a consequence of post-World War II social movements. The national liberation movements active in Third World countries, after the war posed the question of what would be their official languages after independence, a pressing question, since almost all of them are multilingual. This led to scholarly study of the language situation in the countries of the world. In addition, the movements for minority rights in the United States and other Western countries has led to a close examination of social variation that complements earlier work in geographical variation. Scholars have turned the analytical tools of linguistics to the study of non-standard varieties like African American, vernacular English and Chicano Spanish. And the women's movement has led many linguists to investigate gender differences in speech, and whether our language has to perpetuate sexual inequality. Linguistics, as any science, has passed through many developmental stages. Many theories have been introduced to tackle various linguistics phenomena and issues. Starting, at least, from the 19th century, linguistics had been knowing interesting progressions in terms of the ways, methods, theories, and approaches of treating and conducting linguistics issues. In the 19th and 20th centuries, linguistics had known recognizable developments. The school of historical linguistics was established and progressed in the 19th century. It was, later, known as neo-grammarianism. At the beginning of the 20th century, structuralism came to light with the insights introduced by the Swiss-French linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. In the second half of the 20th century, generative linguistics was born and developed with its founder Noam Chomsky's permanent efforts and has been the dominant theory until the present time. The pre-structuralist tradition in the 19th century. Linguistics, as a science, began at the beginning of the 19th century. Its main interest was comparing languages to identify their historical developments and to determine their genealogical relations. The period is thus known as the comparative historical tradition. Linguistics at this period was diachronic in its orientation. The advent of structuralism in the 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, and based on the developments linguistics had reached in the 19th century with the neo-grammarians, there had been a turning point in linguistic the rising, especially with the advancement put forth by the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. Saussure's germinal ideas were gathered in the famous Cours de linguistique générale, Lectures in General Linguistics, a collection of his lectures in Geneva. The book was based on Saussure's original insights and his students' notes and published in 1916 by Charles Bally and Albert Secherhai after Saussure's death in 1913. Schools modern of linguistics. Modern linguistics started to flourish with the eminent work of Ferdinand de Saussure, 1916. Cours de linguistique générale. His concepts influenced many subsequent linguists such as Edward Sapir, André Martinet, William Pavlov and Noam Chomsky. 1. The Structuralist School. It was led by Ferdinand de Saussure, 1916, in Europe and Leonard Bloomfield, 1933, in USA. Saussure considered language as a structure which can be studied independently of other languages or other aspects of language. Language has its own internal structure, and the positions of words and their meanings in a language are dependent on their relationship to other words. 2. The functional school. The structuralist's view of language was opposed by the British linguist KHALID, 1973. The American philosopher John Searle, 1971, and the French linguist André Martinet, 1962. They think that language must be studied as a means of communication, not just as a structure. They stated that structure and function must be considered to understand language nature. This view also dated back to thoughts of Prague school led by Trubetskoy and Jakobson, who dealt with the functions of language. 3. The mentalist school. The mentalist school was established by Noam Chomsky, who called for the existence of mind in language studies. Influenced by rationalist view of Descartes, Chomsky stressed the role of reason in the discussion of topics like the philosophy of mind and language acquisition. Principle of modern linguistics. 1. Structuralism, which became the tenets of modern linguistics. 2. Descriptivism, i.e., to describe the rules and facts of language exactly as they find them without any judgment, which contrasts the traditional linguistics of grammar, which was based on prescriptivism. 3. Priority of the spoken language. Traditional linguistics was based on written texts, however, there are variations in grammar and vocabulary which are not reflected in written language. As a result, both spoken and written language should be studied. 4. Equality between languages. All languages are source for data to be studied, there is no priority to primitive language. Any existing natural language is a highly developed system, and its structure does not directly correlate with the stage of social development of its speech community. 5. Synchronic and diachronic description of language. 2 basic principles that can be applied to the language studies. Diachronic studies is related to the historical development and change of language, yet the synchronic linguistics studies language at a single point in time. 6. Paradigmatic versus syntagmatic relation of linguistic units. A syntagmatic relationship involves a sequence of signs that together create meaning. A paradigmatic relationship involves signs that can replace each other, usually changing the meaning with the substitution. 7. Functionalism. Functionalism sees functionality of language and its elements to be the key to understanding linguistic processes and structures. 8. Generativism. A linguistic theory that regards linguistics as the study of a Noam Chomsky, the father of modern linguistics. Who was the father of modern linguistics? We've all heard of Shakespeare, Descartes, and Plato, and rightly so. They are some of the most cited scholars in history. It begs amusement, therefore, that the name of the only living person up there with them in the top 10 most cited scholars is alien to many. That name is Noam Chomsky, an American linguist, cognitive scientist, historian, social critic, philosophy expert, famously called the father of modern linguistics. Chomsky is associated with having shaped the face of contemporary linguistics with his language acquisition and innateness theories. He is also considered a polarizing figure in modern intellectual life, having influenced a broad array of academic fields. Most recently, his interests lie in contentious political issues, such as U.S. foreign policy, Israel-Palestine conflict, contemporary state capitalism. Whilst he may have left linguistics to tackle the world's injustices, however, we mustn't doubt his unwavering influence on the field as he upholds his title as the father of modern linguistics. What actually is linguistics? In order to understand the extent of his influence on linguistics, let's first make sure we know the answer to the question on everyone's mind: what actually is linguistics? The short and sweet answer can be found in its dictionary definition: linguistics is the scientific study of language. But what does this actually mean? To be frank, this means that linguistics is the study of anything and everything to do with language. As a result of this, the field is divided into a number of different areas. For example, we have to name a few: historical linguistics, sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, computational linguistics, neurolinguistics. We can also further subdivide the of linguistics that is concerned with the structure of language. Phonetics are the study of speech sounds in their physical aspects. Phonology are the study of speech sounds in their cognitive aspects. Morphology are the study of the formation of words. Syntax are the study of the formation of sentences. Semantics are the study of meaning, and pragmatics are the study of language use. There are evidently a number of different fields within the discipline. Nevertheless, we might emphasize that linguistics has as its principle the united goal to provide a general theory that explains why languages are the way they are. For Chomsky, the answer to this fundamental question lay in the subfield of syntax, the field that studies the sets of rules, principles, and processes that govern the structure of sentences in a given language. He believed that through studying the deep underlying structural rules of a language, we may be able to come to terms with how and why humans have this unique capacity for language production and comprehension. Noam Chomsky on linguistics. Chomsky therefore used his theories within syntax to arrive at his most groundbreaking and revolutionary idea, that all humans are born with an innate ability, or mechanism, to learn language regardless of the country they are from or the language that they will speak. This idea, that language is an innate mental capacity, was an extremely groundbreaking and revolutionary idea at the time. During the latter half of the 20th century, the field was dominated by something called behaviorism, the view that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. For example, the leading behaviorist at the time, psychologist B.F. Skinner, asserted in his 1957 book, Verbal Behavior, that humans are born with a blank mind, tabula rasa, and that children consequently acquire language by means of repetitively learning and copying the language that they hear. 2 years later, Chomsky published a scathing review of Skinner's book, Destroying Behaviorism, and instead paving the way for his nativist approach to language. The nativist approach argued that the theory of an innate capacity for language accounts for crucial aspects of language that behaviorism cannot explain. For example, it would account for the great speed with which humans come to possess language, for our linguistic creativity, and for the fact that children make a lot of mistakes when they are learning language. If they were simply copying adults, they would not make these mistakes. Chomsky's influence on linguistics. Chomsky consequently put forward a convincing demolition of the behaviorist theory, and it gave a credible argument for this biological blueprint theory of language. Nevertheless, precisely what this blueprint, or innate capacity, is and how it works is an issue that still permeates the field to this day. Even Chomsky himself has never actually decided on one theory in particular, having elaborated and revised his theory ever since its conception. Steven Pinker points out that despite such extensive criticism, none of Chomsky's critics have created a language acquisition model that entirely dispenses with the notion of an innate structure, highlighting the importance and the enduring supremacy of his theory. His everlasting legacy. It is clear therefore that whilst the ins and outs of Chomsky's most important theory are still yet to be ironed out, the influence he had on the field is unrivaled, Chomsky has had a unique impact, and it can be argued that his ideas and work have shaped the development of linguistics far more than any other single individual. We might even go as far as saying that he redefined the study of language, setting linguists the task of finding out the precise ways in which our unique linguistic ability works. He has left this task to his contemporaries, whilst he goes in pursuit of speaking out against the world's injustices. However, when asked by John Horgan which work he found more satisfying, his political activism or linguistic research, he replied that he spoke out against injustice merely out of a sense of duty. He took no intellectual pleasure from it. If the world's problems suddenly disappeared, he would happily, joyfully, devote himself to the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. It is clear, therefore, that whilst you might be far more likely to hear his name in the political sphere nowadays, linguistics is where Chomsky's heart really lies. Interested in learning more? If you're a young motivated student looking to enhance and build your academic confidence, then why not have a look at our Applied Linguistics group on YouTube or Facebook, so that you could continuously improve your linguistics education from BS to MA, M.Phil, MS and PhD.
Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL and uploaded this video for BS English students. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities, and was admitted to a postdoctoral study program abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at